Hi. Okay. How's everybody doing? Okay. Is it as hot in Orange County as it is up here? Uh-huh. Okay. Somehow that makes us feel better. Shared misery is less misery. So here we continue with the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We are on Monday, January 4th, 1886. And this is not too far from the time that he leaves his body. It was the 14th day of the dark fortnight of the moon. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Sri Ramakrishna was sitting in his room. He told M that Ram Chatterjee had come from the Kali temple at Dakshineshwar to inquire about his health. He asked M whether it was now very cold at the temple garden. Narendra arrived. Now and then the master looked at him and smiled. It appeared to M that that day the master's love for his beloved disciple was boundless. He indicated to M by a sign that Narendra had wept. Then he remained quiet. Again he indicated that Narendra had cried all the way from home. No one spoke. Narendra broke the silence. Narendra: I have been thinking of going there today. Master: where? Narendra: to Dakshineshwar. I intend to light a fire under the bell tree and meditate. Master: no. The authorities of the Powder Magazine, which was a British munitions factory, will not allow it. Yeah, sounds like the Panchvati is a nice place. Many sadhus have practiced japa and meditation there. But it is very cold there. The place is dark, too. Again, for a few moments, all sat in silence. Master to Narendra, smiling: won't you continue your studies? Narendra, looking at the master and M: I shall feel greatly relieved when I find a medicine that will make me forget all that I studied. The elder Gopal, who was also in the room, said, I shall accompany Narendra. Kalipada Ghosh had brought a box of grapes for Sri Ramakrishna. It lay beside the master. The master gave Narendra a few and poured the rest on the floor for the devotees to pick up. It was evening. Narendra was sitting in the room downstairs. He was smoking and describing to M the yearning of his soul. No one else was with them. Narendra: I was meditating here last Saturday when suddenly I felt a peculiar sensation in my heart. M: it was probably the awakening of the Kundalini. Narendra: probably it was. I clearly perceived the Ida and Pingala nerves. I asked Hazra to feel my chest. Yesterday I saw him, meaning the master, upstairs and told him about it. I said to him, all the others have had their realization. Please give me some. All have succeeded. Shall I alone remain unsatisfied? Satisfied? M: what did he say to you? Narendra: he said, why don't you settle your family affairs first and then come to me? You will get everything. What do you want? I replied, it is my desire to remain absorbed in samadhi continually for 3 or 4 days, only once in a while coming down to the sense plane to eat a little food. Thereupon he said to me, you are a very small-minded person. There is a state higher even than that. All that exists art thou. It is you who sing that song. Yes, he always says that after coming down from samadhi, one sees that it is God himself who's become the universe, the living beings, and all that exists. The Ishvara Kodis alone can attain that state. An ordinary person can at most attain samadhi, but he cannot come down from that state. Narendra: he, the master, said, settle your family affairs and then come to me. You will attain a state higher than samadhi. I went home this morning. My people scolded me, saying, why do you wander about like a vagabond? Your law examination is near at hand, and you are not paying any attention to your studies. You wander about aimlessly. M: did your mother say anything? Narendra: no, she was very eager to feed me. She gave me venison. I ate a little, though I didn't feel like eating meat. M: and then? Narendra: I went to study at my grandmother's. As I tried to read, I was seized with a great fear, as if studying were a terrible thing. My heart struggled within me, and I burst into tears. I never wept so bitterly in my life. I left my books and ran away. I ran along the streets. My shoes slipped from my feet. I didn't know where. I ran past a haystack and got hay all over me. I kept on running along the road to Kasipur. Narendra remained silent a few minutes and then resumed. Narendra, since reading Vivekachudamani, I have felt very much depressed. In it, Shankaracharya says that only through great tapasya and good fortune does one acquire three things: a human birth, desire for liberation, and refuge with a great soul. I said to myself, I have surely gained all these three. As a result of great tapasya, I have been born as a human being. Through great tapasya, again, I have the desire for liberation. And through great tapasya, I've secured the companionship of such a great soul. Narendra, I have no more taste for the world. I do not relish the company of those who live in the world, of course with the exception of one or two devotees. Narendra became silent again. A fire of intense renunciation was burning within him. His soul was restless for the vision of God. He resumed the conversation. Narendra to M. You have found peace, but my soul is restless. You are blessed indeed. M did not reply, but sat in silence. He said to himself, Sri Ramakrishna said that one must pant and pine for God. Only then may one have the vision of him. Immediately after dusk, M went upstairs. He found Sri Ramakrishna asleep. It was about 9 o'clock in the evening. Niranjan and Shashi were sitting near the master. He was awake. Every now and then he talked of Narendra. Master, how wonderful is Narendra's state of mind. You see, this very Narendra did not believe in the forms of God, and now you see how his soul is panting for God. You know the story of the man who asked his guru about how it could be realized. The guru said to him, come with me. I shall show you how one can attain God. Saying this, he took his disciple to a lake and held his head under the water. After a short time, he released the disciple and asked him, how do you feel? I was dying for a breath of air, said the disciple. When the soul longs and yearns for God like that, then you will know that you do not have to wait long for his vision. The rosy color of the eastern horizon shows before the sun, that shows that the sun will soon rise. This day, Sri Ramakrishna's illness was worse. In spite of much suffering, he said many things about Narendra, though mostly by signs. At night, Narendra left for Dakshineshwar. It was very dark, being the night of the new moon. He was accompanied by one or two devotees. M spent the night at the Kasipur garden. He dreamt that he was seated in an assembly of sannyasis. That is the end of that day. Are there any comments or questions or objections? Everyone okay? All right, then we'll go on to the next day, which is Tuesday, January 5th, 1886. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting on his bed and talking to M. No one else was in the room. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Master, if Kshirod makes a pilgrimage to Gangasagar, which is right at the mouth of the Ganges, at the ocean, then please buy a blanket for him. M. Yes, sir. Sri Ramakrishna was silent for a few minutes. Then he said, Master, well, can you tell me what is happening to these youngsters? Some are running off to Puri and some to Gangasagar. All have renounced their homes. Look at Narendra. When a person is seized with a spirit of intense renunciation, they regard the world as a deep well and their relatives as venomous cobras. M. Yes, sir. Life in this world is full of suffering. Master. Yes, it is the suffering of hell, and from the very moment of birth. Don't you see what trouble one's wife and children are? M. Yes, sir. You yourself said these youngsters have no relationship whatsoever with the world. They owe nothing to the world, nor do they expect anything from it. It is from a sense of obligation that entangles a person in the world. Master. Don't you see how Niranjan is? His attitude toward the world is this. Here, take what is thine and give me what is mine. That is all. He has no further relationship with the world. There is nothing to pull him from behind. Lust and greed alone is the world. Don't you see that if you have money, you want to lay it by? M burst out laughing. Sri Ramakrishna also laughed. M. One thinks a great deal before taking money out, both laughed. But once you said at Dakshineshwar that is quite different is if one is able to live in the world free from the three gunas. Master, yes, like a child. M, yes, sir. But it is exceedingly difficult. It requires tremendous power. Ramakrishna remained silent. M, yesterday they went to Dakshineshwar to meditate. I had a dream. Master, what did you dream? M, I dreamt that Narendra and some others had become sannyasis. They were sitting around a lighted fire. I too was there. They were smoking tobacco and blowing out puffs of smoke. I told them that I could smell hemp. Master, mental renunciation is the essential thing. That too makes one a sannyasi. Ramakrishna kept silent a few minutes and then went on. Master, but one must set fire to one's desires. Then alone can one succeed. M, you said to the pundit of the Marwaris from Borabazar that you had the desire for bhakti. Isn't the desire for bhakti to be counted as a desire? Master, no. Just as hinche greens are not to be counted as greens. Hinche restrains the secretions of bile. Well, I don't know what hinche is. Does anyone know what hinche greens are? No. Okay. One of these days we'll have to look on Google and see what hinche greens are. Hinche. Hinche greens. Okay. Well, all my joy, all my ecstasy, where are they now? M, perhaps you are in the state of mind that the Gita describes as beyond the three gunas. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas are performing their own functions, and you yourself are unattached even to Sattva. Master, yes. The Divine Mother has put me into the state of a child. Tell me, won't the body live through this illness? The Master and M became silent. Narendra entered the room. He was going home to settle his family's affairs. Since his father's death, Narendra had been in a great distress about his mother and brothers. Now and then they'd been threatened with starvation. Narendra was the family's only hope. They expected him to earn money and to feed them, but Narendra could not appear for his law examination. He was passing through a state of intense renunciation. He was going to Calcutta that day to make some provision for the family. A friend had agreed to lend him 100 rupees. That would take care of the family for 3 months. Narendra, I'm going home to M. I shall visit Mahima Charan on the way. Will you come with me? M did not want to go. Looking at M, Ramakrishna asked Narendra, why? Narendra, I'm going that way, so I shall stop at Mahima's place and have a chat with him. Ramakrishna looked at Narendra intently. Narendra, a friend who comes here said he would lend me 100 rupees. That will take care of the family for 3 months. I'm going home to make the arrangement. Ramakrishna remained silent and looked at M. M to Narendra, no, you go ahead. I shall go later. Okay, any comments on that? Questions? Okay, then we'll move on to the next time the entry is made, which is Thursday, March 11th, 1886. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. Ramakrishna was in the big hall on the second floor, and that would be in Kasipur. Narendra, Shashi, M, Sharat, and the elder Gopal were in the room. Ramakrishna was lying down. Sharat stood by his bed and fanned him. The master was speaking about his illness. Master, if some of you go to Dakshineshwar and see Bholanath, he will give you the medicinal oil and also tell you how to apply it, the elder Gopal. Then we shall go for the oil tomorrow morning. M, if someone goes this evening, he can bring the oil. Shashi, I shall go. Master, pointing to Sharat, he may go. After a time, Sharat set out for Dakshineshwar to get oil from Bholanath. The devotees, sitting around Ramakrishna's bed, were silent. Suddenly, the master sat up. He spoke to Narendranath. Master, Brahman is without taint. The three gunas are in Brahman, but it itself is untainted by them. You might find both good smells and bad smells in the air, but the air itself is unaffected. Shankaracharya was going along a street in Benares. An outcast carrying a load of meat suddenly touched him. What? Said Shankara. You have touched me. Revered sir, said the outcast, I have not touched you, and you have not touched me. The Atman is above all contamination, and you are that pure Atman. Of Brahman and Maya, the Jnani rejects Maya. Maya is like a veil. You see, I hold this towel between you and the lamp. You no longer see the light of the lamp. Sri Ramakrishna put the towel between himself and the devotees. Master, now you cannot see my face anymore. As Ram Prasad said, raise the curtain and behold. The Bhakta, however, does not ignore Maya. He worships Mahamaya. Taking refuge in her, he says, O Mother, please stand aside from my path. Only if you are out of my way shall I have the knowledge of Brahman. The Jnanis explain away the three states, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. But the Bhaktas accept them all. As long as there is your ego, everything else exists. So long as the I exists, the Bhakta sees that it is God who's become Maya, the universe, the living beings, and the 24 cosmic principles. Narendra and the other devotees sat silently listening. Master, but the theory of Maya is dry. To Narendra, repeat what I said. Narendra, Maya is dry. Sri Ramakrishna affectionately stroked Narendra's face and hands. He said, your face and hands show that you are a bhakta. But the jnani has different features. They are dry. Even after attaining jnana, the jnani can live in the world retaining vidyamaya, that is to say, bhakti, compassion, renunciation, and such virtues. This serves him two purposes. First, the teaching of other people. Second, the enjoyment of divine bliss. If a jnani remains silent, merged in samadhi, then people's hearts will not be illumined. Therefore, Shankaracharya kept the ego of knowledge. Further, a jnani lives as a devotee in the company of bhaktas in order to enjoy and drink deep of the bliss of God. The ego of devotion and the ego of knowledge can do no harm. It is the wicked eye that is harmful. After realizing God, a person becomes like a child. There's no harm in the ego of a child. It's like the reflection of a face in the mirror. The reflection cannot call names, or it is like a burnt rope, which appears to be a rope, but disappears at the slightest puff. The ego that has been burnt in the fire of knowledge cannot injure anyone. It is ego only in name. Returning to the relative plane after reaching the absolute is like coming back to this shore of the river after going to the other side. Such a return to the relative plane is for the teachers of people and for enjoyment, participation in the divine sport and the world. Sri Ramakrishna was talking in a very low voice. Addressing the devotees, he said, this body is so ill, but the mind is free from avidyamaya. Let me tell you, there is no thought in my mind of Ramlal or home or wife. But I've been worrying about Purna, that Kayasta boy. That's a caste. I am not in the least anxious for the others. It is God alone who has kept this vidyamaya in me, for the good of men, for the welfare of the devotees. But if one retains vidyamaya, one comes back to this world. The avatars keep this vidyamaya. So long as a person has even the slightest desire, they must be born again and again. When they have gotten rid of desires, then they're liberated. But the bhaktas do not seek liberation. If a person dies in Benares, they attain liberation. They're not born again. Liberation is the goal of the jnanis. Narendra. The other day we went to visit Mahimacharan. Master smiling. Well? Narendra. I have never seen before such a dry jnani. Master smiling. What was the matter? Master. He asked us to sing. Gangadhar, that would later be Swami Akhandananda, sang, Radha is restored to life by hearing her Krishna's name. She looks about in front of her and she sees a tamala tree. On hearing the song, Mahimacharan said, why such songs here? I don't care for love and all that nonsense. Besides, I live here with my wife and children. Why these songs here? Master to him. See how afraid he is? Astute comment. Now, any points there that anyone wants to mention or bring up? Well, then we'll move on to Sunday, March 14th, 1886. Sri Ramakrishna sat facing the north in the large room upstairs, and that again would be at Kasipur. It was evening. He was very ill. Narendra and Rakhal were gently massaging his feet. M sat near the master by a sign, asked him to stroke his feet, and M obeyed. The previous Sunday, the devotees had observed Ramakrishna's birthday with worship and prayer. His birthday the year before had been observed at Dakshineshwar with great pomp, but this year, on account of his illness, the devotees were very sad and there was no festivity at all. The Holy Mother, Sri Sarda Devi, busied herself day and night at the Master's service. Among the young disciples, Narendra, Rakhal, Niranjan, Sharat, Shashi, Baburam, Yogin, Latu, and Kali had been staying with him in the garden house. The older devotees visited him daily, and some of them occasionally spent the night there. That day, Ramakrishna was feeling very ill. At midnight, the moonlight flooded the garden, but could wake no response in the devotees' hearts. They were drowned in a sea of grief. They felt like they were living in a beautiful city besieged by a hostile army. Perfect silence reigned everywhere. Nature was still, except for the gentle rustling of the leaves at the touch of the south wind. Ramakrishna lay awake. One or two devotees sat near him in silence. At times he seemed to doze. M was seated by his side. Ramakrishna asked him by a sign to come nearer. The sight of his suffering was unbearable. In a very soft voice and with great difficulty, he said to M, "I've gone on suffering so much for the fear of making you all weep. But if you say, 'Oh, there's so much suffering, let the body die,' then I may give up the body." These words pierced the devotees' hearts. And he who was their father, mother, and protector had uttered these words. What could they say? All sat in silence. Some thought, is this another crucifixion, to sacrifice the body for the sake of the devotees? It was the dead of night. Ramakrishna's illness was taking a turn for the worse. The devotees wondered what was to be done. One of them left for Calcutta. That very night, Girish came to the garden house with two physicians, Upendra and Navagopal. The devotees sat near the master. He felt a little better and said to them, "The illness is of the body, and that is as it should be. I see that the body is made of the 5 elements." Turning to Girish, he said, "I'm seeing so many forms of God. Among them, I find this one also," meaning his own form. And then we go on to the next day, which is Monday, March 15th, 1886, which would be the very next day. About 7 o'clock in the morning, Ramakrishna felt a little better. He talked with the devotees in a whisper, sometimes by signs. Narendra, Rakhal, Latu, M, Gopal of Sinti, and others were in the room. They sat speechless and looked grave, thinking of the master's sufferings on the previous night. Master to the devotees, "Do you know what I see right now? I see it as God himself who has become all this. It seems to me that people and all other living beings are made of leather, and it is God himself who, dwelling inside these leather cases, moved the hands, the feet, the heads. I had a similar vision before, where I saw houses, gardens, roads, men, cattle, all made of one substance. It was as if they were all made of wax. I see that it is God himself who has become the block, the executioner, and the victim for the sacrifice." As he described his staggering experience, in which he realized in full the identity of the one within one being, he was overwhelmed with emotion and exclaimed, "Ah, what a vision!" Immediately, Ramakrishna goes into samadhi. He completely forgets his body and the outer world. The devotees are bewildered. Not knowing what to do, they sit still. Presently, the master regains partial consciousness of the world and says, "Now I have no pain at all. I'm my old self again." The devotees are amazed to watch the state of the master beyond pleasure and pain, weal and woe. He cast his glance on Latu and said, "There is Loto." He bends his head, resting it on the palm of his hand. I see it as God himself who rests his head on his hand. Ramakrishna looks at the devotees, and his love for them wells up in 1,000 streams. Like a mother showing her tenderness for her children, he touches the faces and the chins of Rakhal and Narendra. A few minutes later, he says to M, "If the body were to be preserved a few days more, Many people would have their spirituality awakened. He paused a few minutes. But this is not to be. This time the body will not be preserved. The devotees eagerly await the Master's next words. Such is not the will of God. This time, such is not the will of God. This time the body will not be preserved, lest finding me guileless and foolish, people should take advantage of me, and lest I, guileless and foolish as I am, should give away everything to everybody. In this Kali Yuga, you see, people are adverse to meditation and japa. Ra called tenderly, please speak to God that he may preserve your body sometime more. Master, that depends on God's will. Narendra, your will and God's will have become one. Ramakrishna remained silent. He appears to be thinking about something. Master, to Narendra, Rakal, and the others, and nothing will happen if I speak to God. Now I see that I and the mother have become one. For fear of her sister-in-law, Radha said to Krishna, please dwell in my heart. But when later on she became very eager for a vision of Krishna, so eager that her heart pined and panted for her beloved, he would not come out. Rakal in a low voice to the devotees. He is referring to God's incarnation as Gauranga, that is Sri Chaitanya. The devotees sat silently in the room. Ramakrishna looks at them tenderly. Then he places his hand on his heart. He is about to speak. Master, to Narendra and the others. There are two persons in one, the Divine Mother. He pauses. The devotees eagerly look at him to hear what he will say next. Master, yes. One is she, and the other is her devotee. It is the devotee who broke his arm. It is the devotee who is now ill. Do you understand? The devotees sit without uttering a word. Master, alas, to whom shall I say all this? Who will understand me? Pausing a few moments, he says, God has become man, an avatar, who come to earth with his devotees, and the devotees leave the world with him. Rakal, therefore we pray that you may not go away and leave us behind. Ramakrishna smiles and said, a band of minstrels suddenly appears, dances, and sings, and it departs with the same sudden manner. They come and they return, but none recognize them. The master and the devotees smile. In a few minutes he says, suffering is inevitable when one assumes a human body. Let's all remember that. Every now and then I say to myself, may I not have to come back to earth again. But there is something else. After enjoying sumptuous feasts outside, one does not relish cheap home cooking. Besides, this assuming of a human body is for the sake of the devotees. Ramakrishna looks at Narendra very tenderly. Master, to Narendra, an outcast was carrying a load of meat. Shankaracharya, after bathing the Ganges, was passing by. Suddenly the outcast touched him. Shankara said sharply, what? You touched me. Revered sir, he replied, I have not touched you, nor have you touched me. Reason with me. Are you the body, the mind, or the buddhi? Analyze what you are. You are the pure Atman, unattached and free, unaffected by the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. It's the second time within 3 days he's mentioning the same example. Do you know what Brahman is like? It's like air. Good and bad smells are carried by the air, but the air is unaffected. Narendra, yes, sir. He's really trying to imprint that on Narendra's mind. Master, he is beyond the gunas and maya, beyond both maya of knowledge and the maya of ignorance. Lust and greed is the maya of ignorance. Knowledge, renunciation, devotion, and other spiritual qualities are the splendors of the maya of knowledge. Shankaracharya kept this maya of knowledge. That you and these others feel concerned about me is due to this maya of knowledge. And this is a good place to stop, because now the sheep out there are having their say about everything. Are there any questions or comments on this? Baba. Yeah, Amrita.
Hinshi.
Yes.
It is a bitter green that grows in tropical humid weather. They grow wildly in ponds, swamps, and marshlands, and are very good to cure swelling of any kind and bringing down body temperature. In Ayurveda, these are widely used as purgative, anti-swelling medicine, and also for glowing skin. Hilly
Glowing
tribes,
skin?
Bengal use these as local medicines and also adds them to their daily meal. The leaves and tender shoots are crisp and juicy and tastes good boiled, fried, or in curries. And there's an article about some woman and her husband going back to their villages in Bengal, and this is what they served at the wedding. And
Oh my.
I
So
think
I
it's
guess I was
very-
wondering if it was the same thing as, what are those bitter herbs? And sometimes we put them on plants. What is that? Neem. I was
plant?
wondering if it's the same thing as neem, but I guess not.
No, it doesn't look exactly. You can look online. It looks like the leaf is probably about 2 inches long, much longer than a
Much longer
neem.
than
From
neem.
what the diagram I'm looking at.
Well, I think
anyway.
it's time for someone to grow it so we can all have it. Okay, well, I think, let's see, so upcoming events, this Wednesday is the first day of Mahalaya. It's Mahalaya's on Wednesday, which is the first day of Durga Puja. It is the 6th, which means it's time for y'all to sign up for your extra Durga Puja japa. So please email krishnaprana@vedanta.org to sign up for your daily. It's from the 6th to the 15th. 6th to the 15th. So please email krishnaprana@vedanta.org and sign up for your pledge of daily japa, because as Swami Swahananda started this grand tradition, because if you do 100,000 japas, it's this, if we all together band together, 100,000 japas the same as another Durga Puja itself. So we all, it's a great thing to do. Everyone really enjoys it. It's very powerful. Also coming up on Wednesday will be the reading from For Seekers of God at 5 o'clock. Oh, tomorrow there's a lecture on learning from nature at 11 o'clock. And Saturday will be no, there will not be a reading from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna next Saturday. No, siree, will not be, because it is Durga Puja, which is going to be online. So please visit online. It should be grand. Swami Sarvadevananda will do the puja. And hopefully next year we can start having like a normal Durga Puja, but that's not, it's in the hands of the Divine Mother. Okay, so we can conclude with a chant. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.